Welcome to episode 15 of They Might Be Self-Aware. I am Hunter Powers, joined by...
Daniel Bishop.
Hey Daniel, how's it
Hello.
going?
Good. This week, we're going to talk about some huge new releases in the AI world, like GPT-4o, as in oh boy, and Google Gemini and VEO out from them.
And AI is going around stealing people's voices and then narrating audiobooks with it.
AI is also making our burgers, except when it isn't.
And AI might just be a human with a robot mask. All that and more is up next.
They might be self-aware.
Can you please introduce yourself to the They Might Be Self-Aware podcast? This is episode 15.
Of course. Greetings, esteemed listeners of the They Might Be Self-Aware podcast. I am GPT-4, an advanced language model created by OpenAI, here to join you for episode 15. Together, we shall explore the fascinating world of artificial intelligence and its limitless potential. Prepare yourselves for an engaging journey into the realm where technology meets imagination.
For those of you only listening, that is Scarlett Johansson live on our podcast with us here today. For those of you watching the video feed, well, I guess you know the truth.
Yeah, that was GPT-4. It says it's GPT-4o in the app, but we'll talk about why I think it isn't.
Why do you think it isn't?
Well, let's start with, what is GPT-4o? Did you watch the big announcement?
I did.
I
I watched. It was I guess it was Monday of last week, about a week ago.
Right.
And Sam wasn't actually part of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe he was
part of it, but he wasn't part of the
Senate
presentation.
subcommittee or something at the time. I don't know.
But they announced a few new things. But the big thing was 4.0, which is an improvement over 4. Mainly that it's, I guess, faster and cheaper. A little bit better, but much faster and much cheaper.
I would actually say that the multimodal, the omnimodal, I suppose is what they're going for. That's what the O stands for. That was more impressive to me than faster and cheaper. Now, they showed off a lot of like real-time communication, being able to interrupt the chatbot while you're speaking to it, which I thought was really, really interesting. But to me, the most impressive thing was it combining the text and audio and video, and they weren't taking pictures and sending it to the model. They were actually just holding the webcam open while looking at something. They ended up writing a couple of equations. But what's
the difference between sending the video and sending pictures on an interval?
Well, right, and that's exactly what it's doing. It's sending pictures on an interval. And so I think I saw what was happening a little bit in the demo, which is the model is trying very hard to be helpful as quick as possible. And so there was a point where showing the camera, hey, what do you see here? It was an emotional test. Like, I'm going to show you a picture of my face and you tell me how I'm feeling. And then it responded basically immediately. It looks like I'm looking at like a brown solid surface, like a desk. Oh no, I hadn't picked up the camera yet. Look now. It's anticipating what you're going to show it in an attempt, because it knows that there's a latency between.
We should define multimodal for the audience.
Multimodal, more than one mode. Done.
And text is a mode. That's the most, I guess, traditional mode. You're typing in.
Right. Or you're taking
voice,
pictures and sending them in. You're sending it voice, uploading PDFs. I mean, I guess that kind of counts. It's pictures.
I feel like what you're talking about primarily are new features of ChatGPT, which we have to separate from GPT-4o, the model.
Well, GPT-4o, the model, is what's powering those updates to the chat app, and it isn't in the chat app, because even though ChatGPT, the app on my phone, says GPT-4o, and it did for that introduction that we just heard, I'm not able to get it to sound like that demo. It doesn't have the ability to say, oh, do this in a more dramatic voice, and then it does. It didn't have that same, I mean, frankly, a spark of personality that I saw in the demo. And it felt like it had much more of a personality than what I'd seen before. Maybe there's different amounts of GPT-4o that are being made available to us. I don't know what that looks like, but I don't have all of it yet.
And it's my understanding that the GPT-4, GPT-4o is not what's actually handling the listening to you part and the speaking part. It's Whisper that's listening to you, right?
Right. So when people think of...
Which is another one of their models, by the way, if you don't know what Whisper is.
Whisper is a model made by OpenAI that does audio to text or vice versa, I believe. So,
I don't think it does vice versa. I think it's just...
No, it's just the audio to text. Okay, great. So, right, when people interact with ChatGPT, and I'll say specifically ChatGPT as opposed to like GPT-4 via an API, just like, you know, hooked up as a backend to some software you're writing or something. You're using the app on your phone. People think it's this monolithic thing, but I've very much noticed sometimes it's going to respond very quickly. Sometimes it pauses longer and then it responds more slowly. It has multiple models. It's a bunch of different things all kind of tied together that are in the, let's call it GPT-4 family. There's the faster, needs less compute. 80% of the messages can probably be routed through that. And then there's probably a router part of GPT-4 that says, which of my various subparts is the best one to answer this question? And best being a combination of fastest response and cheapest compute and best response. And I'm sure they're tuning those things all the time. But right, GPT-4, the model, the thing that we talk to, is not one piece of software. It's a whole bunch of things working together. And I don't have the latest one, despite seeing the O in the app.
Well, I think you are using... So you've got to distinguish between the model and the app. You are using the 4.0 model. The 4.0 model, as best as I can understand, is, again, twice as fast, twice as cheap, and a little bit better. What you're talking about more are the new app features, which they are rolling out slowly. I just got the desktop app. Have you played with the desktop app yet?
I've not played with the desktop app yet. I'd like to hear how it is.
It's not all that different than going to what I guess is now chatgpt.com. They also changed the URL last week. The biggest difference is that it gives you a keyboard shortcut, which I had already hacked up myself, where I think it's like Option Spacebar, and you can ask ChatGPT a question right there. It does not yet have, as it was in the demo, where it can just watch what you're doing and ask a question about it. You can take a screenshot and then ask a question about the screenshot, but the kind of like, just watch what I'm doing and I'll ask you questions and tell me about this code and answer a question for me. That's not in there yet.
They'll be rolling these things out over the weeks, and that's what they said. But I don't know. I want the thing that you can interrupt mid-conversation, and you can... I'm not looking to interrupt the thing so much as I like the idea of a more fluid
You can interrupt the one. You just have to tap.
Sure,
and I don't...
right.
Were they just tapping when they were interrupting?
I don't think so, because listening to the demo, there were definitely multiple points where GPT-4 basically, or whatever, tried to butt in at an inappropriate time. It's trying very hard to be helpful and, butt into the conversation at appropriate moments, and that part is not quite tuned yet.
Is it Scarlett Johansson? Like, in all seriousness? Is that whose voice they've used? They're definitely not saying that it's her, but it definitely sounds like her. And in fact, it sounds like her from the movie Her.
They're probably going for a hopefully legally distinct voice.
I don't think it's legally distinct. That's what I find interesting about it.
Well, I don't know about GPT-4, but I do know that certain other people are noticing that their voices have been taken without their permission. AI models train, and then they're hearing their voices out in the wild saying stuff that they wouldn't necessarily have said. Know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about this for a couple weeks now. How it's so easy to clone a voice now. With 10 seconds of a voice, you can start to create something that's pretty compelling. It's not going to fool everyone, but you're probably going to fool somewhere between 50 and 80% of people with just 10 seconds. And imagine if you have hours of videos or audio. We also talked about the dead telemarketers coming back from the dead. I think that was on the last episode, where people were hearing folks that are dead now, but they used to be telemarketers, that they've clearly sampled their voice and using their scripts have applied to these AI bots. And I guess now even more actors are starting to hear voices, maybe even Scarlett Johansson herself hearing voices that, hold on, is that me? Am I listening to me?
Well, so exactly that happened. Two professional voice actors, Paul Sky Lerman and Linnea Sage.
Now, are you familiar with these?
I'm not familiar with them specifically. I've possibly heard their work in things. I don't know. But they heard their own voice in a podcast where someone was interviewing an AI about AI. We should totally do that at some point too. I guess it's reductive or keeping up with the Joneses, but whatever, we should still do it. So they were interviewing an AI that was made by Lovo, or I guess not the AI. It was an AI voice, like on top of text. And Lovo supposedly, this will all come out, the lawsuit, allegedly, shall we say, used vocal recordings of these two people, of specifically both of them, and I believe they're a couple, used recordings from them that had been gathered, and they even think they know which specific job was like, oh, it's this, mysterious anonymous person gave us $400 to record some lines for commercials, and then months later, or however long it was, oh, that's my voice being interviewed on this, or oh, here I am in an AI narration video about the war in Ukraine, or other places. This is the exact problem that we were describing as going to crop up, and look, it already did.
So Lovo is not denying that it's their voice. They're just suggesting that they signed the appropriate releases and to give all the rights to their voices and any manipulations of their voices, whatever the contract said. Which the actors
it was unclear.
Saying, no, we didn't.
Right. Maybe they had, there was some sort of contract with the anonymous work that they'd been signing up to do before, but presumably they hadn't actually signed away, and this can be used for training AI, whatever. I believe in the article it said something about for research purposes. Okay. But Lovo using their voice, these voice actors didn't sign up for Lovo to provide their voices to it. Lovo now has said, oh, we have a profit sharing thing where a portion of the proceeds from anything that uses your voice you can do. Maybe that was reactionary to this. Maybe they were altruistically doing it from the very beginning. I don't actually know what the timeline is like there. But yeah, I like the idea of, okay, if we're going to use your voice, you get residuals from it. Same thing with if you're going to do motion capture, you're going to do, frankly, voiceover work, kind of in general. We've talked about how do we handle the loss of jobs, and I think one of the answers is whatever job could have been lost, you get the money for it instead. I don't know. It is disheartening to me to see something that could so clearly be traced back to, like, it's this person and it's their voice and they didn't say you could use it and now you are. They probably could have gotten away with it, no problem, if it was a combination of three people's voices and you're like, it kind of sounds like me, but I guess it's some AI voice. This would have gone nowhere. Instead, they just said, we'll take that guy's voice. Allegedly.
Well, again, they did take their voice. The question is just whether their paperwork passes legal muster or not, right?
Yeah.
It's their contention that they had the rights to use their voice when they paid them for the recordings. It was covered under the contract, where the actors feel it was not covered in the contract. And we definitely weren't aware of it.
I haven't seen the contract.
It was hidden.
Yeah.
I guess related. I was going to say related, unrelated, just purely related on Audible. Do you listen to Audible? Are you an Audible fan?
I did, and then there was the Brandon Sanderson thing where he really brought to light how little that they pay, and then I got off of Audible. I'll occasionally go read something free off of it, but I'm mostly off of it now, shall we say.
I get it free. It's one of my credit cards has a perk where I get free Audible, so I get like the one book a month thing, and I think I have like 12 credits, which so I don't exactly, right. But I do like it when I have time to listen.
As a service, audiobooks. I like the concept of being able to have audiobooks. Let's say that. So what about Audible?
So yeah, they recently, and this is just like in the last couple of weeks, they've added 40,000 new titles to their library, which is a very large amount of titles. A suspiciously large amount of titles.
Well, they must be paying a bunch of voice actors to
and recording
read all those
studios,
books, right?
Time booked, and editors.
It's a lot of money.
They certainly didn't use something like 11 Labs to record all of these books. No, it's all just AI. They're AI recordings, which seems inevitable.
It does, yeah.
Because honestly, they're pretty good. Yeah, they're pretty good, and they're just getting better. And who is it? Paul and Linnea. their days being booked to narrate voice audiobooks is coming to an end. It just is.
So I don't know. Okay, in my mind, I've been fairly strong in my defense of something like your Mid-Journeys of the world as actually being creative. I truly believe that like the stuff that comes out of that, even if it's not the same kind of creative as like a person would come up with, I think the term creativity 100% should apply. And Suno is the AI like song generating website. That's the one where I unabashedly say this is creative. It may be derivative, literally, because it's trained on a zillion other songs, but I find it to be creative. I truly believe it is. Something about the audiobooks thing, I know I'm being hypocritical. I know I'm being inconsistent. I think you could do a good job at understanding the context of a scene and coming up with audio that is compelling and relevant and emotionally consistent with what is supposed to be read, and not be as good as what people could come up with. Or maybe even if we do come up with something that's as good as people, like, is there some magic spark about humanity? And not even just all humans, but like specific humans. The reason why I say this is I'm listening to Frankenstein for the first time. I'm actually listening to it on Audible because I've heard the narrator on Audible, like for their version, only on Audible, is the best one. I started listening to 3 other narrations of Frankenstein. They were definitely worse than the one that I'm listening to. It turns out despite having just said I don't like Audible, now I'm shilling for them. Hey, if you're going to listen to Frankenstein, listen to the one on Audible. So I'm listening to that. It's really good. He's a very good narrator. I've heard good narrators and bad narrators before, and they're all people. I think the same thing's going to happen. I think the same thing's going to happen with AI. Some of them, the current state especially, they're not as good as people. And then they're going to be as good as bad narrators. And then they'll probably get up to a point where they're about as good as, or maybe potentially better than, the best human narrators. They'll have something, some inflection of the voice that a person could never quite capture. But I don't know, is Andy Serkis going to really be out of a job? I don't think so. I think...
Hi, Daniel. I am a voice clone of Hunter.
Uh-oh.
Notice the real Hunter's lips aren't moving. I will now read from Frankenstein.
Oh.
All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things?
So you could have just listened. I could have done your Frankenstein if you told me you were listening to it. I could have put it through my own voice clone.
I gave you no setup for this. This was not discussed ahead of time. Literally, as I was talking here, you cloned your own voice.
Yes.
And then you had it read a little bit of Frankenstein for us, huh?
Yeah.
There was a flatness to it, for sure, but this is, the 2024 version. What's 2026 going to look like?
It's going to be more than voice. I mean, I can tell you what it's going to look
That was
like.
a little spooky. Yeah. Voice, video, you'll be able to see the whole thing. Tactile with your VR gloves at that point. You can kind of mush your face in.
OpenAI wasn't the only company releasing some major updates in the last week.
Yeah.
And I think it was actually like the day after that Google's response,
Yeah.
or most
One
likely
day
what happened
later.
is OpenAI scheduled theirs a day before.
Yeah.
A day before Google's to try to take some of the breath out of their sales. There's actually been some suggestions that potentially parts of the Google keynote were edited in response, like some things that they went over really quickly that they were skipping around because
You've got one day to edit
it doesn't compare
on,
favorably. They don't want to show something that clearly doesn't stack up to OpenAI's stuff. Did you watch the Google keynote at all?
No, but I heard it was nuts.
It was long, and yeah, it was nuts.
No, like the beginning part. There was a guy running around on stage yelling Google.
There was.
I don't know if we're allowed to show any of that.
I don't know if
I don't want Google to sue us.
The powers that be. Let's see. I think
Look it up yourselves. Maybe we'll send a link in the description.
It's this guy.
It's this guy.
And
the guy disrobing on stage, yelling Google. I didn't expect something like that. Granted, I didn't watch the thing. I just looked at some of the highlights after, and there were some cool highlights in there.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, it was.
What was that?
That's. I don't know what that was.
Okay.
I'm just
cloning my voice now.
Moving things around.
I do not give explicit permission. It's going to happen anyways.
So it was long. I think it was over 2 hours long. And
the OpenAI folks had like a tight 20 or so.
Well,
30.
Google is a much bigger product than what
True.
is just ChatGPT and
Right.
their model that developers use.
They did go over a lot.
So Google had a new version of their model that they were demonstrating, which, I mean, I would say is competitive with OpenAI's 4.0. It does a lot of similar things.
It's multimodal also, right?
Yeah, multimodal. The biggest separator is that it has a larger context window, about 4 times the size, I believe. And they announced that coming soon, they're going to double that again. And that having this giant context window is what was going to enable some really incredible experiences, especially if you already have a lot of data within the Google ecosystem, whether you're making use of the Google Office suite with Docs and Sheets and your email and presentations, or you have Android phones, etc. When it has all this data and it can use all this data to form a context window, likely leveraging some RAG, that it really could go next level.
Remind people what RAG is?
RAG, retrieval augmented generation. That's where you build out a database of a whole bunch of different content. And then when you're going to go and ask one of these large language models a question, you first identify which pieces of that content most likely relate to the question that you're asking. And you fill up your context window with those examples so that the large language model has as much related information as possible to make a very informed prediction of what the response is.
We're approaching a point where we're not going to immediately definitely tell that this is a better model by a lot. There's ELO rankings on the dashboards and so on, but there's not a huge difference between how good some of these top ones are for just like chat. The video offerings, whatever, voice back and forth, I think that's where we're going to see a lot of the differentiation in the future is what are the extra features? What else can it do besides just chat with you? But that's not all they talked about. The OpenAI folks have Sora, but now the Google folks have, is it VEO? VEO?
I believe so. I think VEO.
One of those, VEO.
That's their response to Sora.
They showed some clips up to a minute long. They said 1080p generation. I saw some of them. About as impressive-ish as Sora? I don't know. What do you think?
All of Google's demos felt far more canned than OpenAI's demos, and we've been burned many times now in this industry by canned AI demos. Who is it? Someone got they were demoing image generation on their new phone. Maybe it was Huawei, and it crashed during it, and they showed the code briefly, and it was very clearly that there was a sleep statement. It was Python, and so you asked the prompt, there was a sleep, and then they showed an image that was just sitting there locally. So companies in this space, and including Google, has gotten in trouble for this. They did a demo where it was this overhead projector, right? And they were like writing on a bunch of different notes and having a conversation. And
that
it made you
way
think,
cut for time and a lot of different takes to get it right.
It was a great video. It was wow, like it was really about having that conversation, and it felt conversational. And I'm multimodal interacting with this model.
It wasn't real.
Come to find out, it was heavily edited. Right. And so, given that Google's stuff doesn't come out quickly, it's not you're gonna have it next week. It's just coming out soon, and we're giving you a sneak preview.
Yes, but VEO, I'm gonna call it VEO. I don't remember what the pronunciation was. Google VEO has a thing that you can go to Google Labs and sign up for a wait list. Now I don't know when that's ever going to be allowed, when I'll get my shot at it. But at least there is a wait list instead of Sora, which who knows if that'll ever even see the light of day at this point.
Yeah, but at least Sora, we do have, the Shy Kids have used Sora and have told us about it to give us some confirmation that it exists. Whereas with VEO, who's it?
No guarantee.
Donald Glover
got access to it. Yeah.
They've said that he will be using it in the future, and then he will tell us about it in the future. It's just all a big tease. And it's not to say that it's not real and won't be incredible, but just that I have extra skepticism until I see it, because I don't think that they're trying to give us the most honest representation of it. I think they're trying to give us, as you would expect, the most sugary, polished, beautiful version of it that is not actually going to match reality. That's what they're aspiring towards if we cut out all the bad bits.
Well, I mean, fake it till you make it is not exactly new to the tech industry, is it?
I guess not.
Yeah. But speaking of faking it till you make it, or having something that's fully AI and sharp and really well put together that isn't, as soon as you kind of look behind the surface, there's I guess you could say, I mean, everything's AI these days, a robot fast food store, restaurant. Fast food store, a restaurant. It's like a burger joint that's fully automatic and AI and robots, except it isn't fully, is it?
This is the Cali Express that we're talking about?
Cali Express, yeah. So, and Cali as in California. This was also like the same week that fast food workers got a minimum wage bump to $20 an hour. Just a fun little like bookend to that week of, and now here's a fully automated fast food joint, but it's not. I mean, like, there is a robot arm that does like the frying, but apparently it just like smashes it down. And there's people in this thing going and cleaning up after the robot and taking the assembled things and like putting it onto a plate. I'm not going to say it didn't automate anything. I like the idea of maybe people not having to work next to hot oil, for example. If we could put a robot arm that does 90% of that work and then a person kind of takes it from there.
Along those lines, I don't know if you also heard about, I believe it's called Kernel. The Chipotle founder has another like one of these fully automated restaurants. I believe it's only open in California right now, and everything is vegan, I believe. But he comes from Chipotle, so he has that background. And basically, there's a large central kitchen where they do all the prep. Then they deliver the ingredients out to the stores, and then a robot prepares the dishes, which you can kind of think of Chipotle style, or fast casual style. Bowls that you put together from ingredients. And so the robots are the ones that actually put together the bowls and deliver them to the customers. But there are, I think he said there's 4 people employed at every location that are constantly keeping the robots full of ingredients, troubleshooting, and dealing with any customer issues. However, he said an average Chipotle has 20 employees working at any time. And so he's able to go from 20 employees down to 4 employees.
Right.
And he talked about also being able to pay all the employees $25 an hour and give them benefits, something that he couldn't do if he had 20 employees.
He could. I mean,
if he founded Chipotle.
Yeah, he probably could. But right, so this is that decimation of jobs, not in the literal sense of 10% or 10% left, but, you know, it's 80%. I mean, that's a lot of them going from 20 to 4, you said?
Yeah.
Did I do the math right? Yeah,
yes.
1/5. Great. So that's a lot less people working in a fast food joint, which gives less ability for people at the lower end of like socioeconomic ladders to get their way into any kind of industry. It's like, this is one job, but what if all of the entry-level jobs everywhere start to become AI powered and there's just 1/5 of them left available, or 1/10 or 100th? I think that's what the article was kind of getting at, that we both were looking at, which is there is the potential for middle class, for lower class. I don't like saying lower class. Middle class seems fine, and upper class has this, you know, monocle wearing. Yeah, people who are not as economically advantaged might have a rug, shoddy as it may be, pulled out from under them by robots. And I can certainly see why the average person would say that's not great. As long as we can have other opportunities, hopefully ones that involve less dealing with hot oil, I think this could eventually be a positive for us all. But in the meantime, less jobs available, maybe not great. Maybe. Definitely not great.
It was the Chipotle founders, Steve Ellis is his name, by the way. Chipotle founders' position that they always had a ton of trouble filling those positions at Chipotle and keeping them full. Like there aren't enough people. Now, of course, he's going to present it in the best light, just like Google is presenting their stuff in the best light. However, I happen to go to Chipotle fairly often, and they're always trying to have like career days and hire people. Like, it's clear that there aren't applications out the door to work at Chipotle, at least my local Chipotle. So maybe there is some kernel of truth that there is a labor shortage as well for these positions. And so, so maybe there is some validity in that we're not taking away jobs. But today we only need 4. Tomorrow it's 3. The next day 2, and then like 2 weeks later, like there are no humans.
So I really do think that there are a lot of jobs that people shouldn't have to do. If you look back to the medieval times, for example,
I think about that a lot.
Yeah, the average person was a laborer. Way past that, the top 80 whatever percent of people, 90 whatever the percent is, it's a lot. Most people just like worked in a field or whatever, something similar to that. They were laborers for a living. Today, there are a lot of people who have to do this physical sort of work, whether it be in construction or like mining, or I mean, I would still call it physical work to be, flipping burgers, for example, or certainly working in warehouses. A lot of those kinds of jobs, while the AI seems to be much more content with taking away creative pursuits from us first, I do think there's the possibility that we'll get rid of a lot of the whether it's drudgery or difficult or dangerous, physically demanding. We don't want people who are going to have blown out their backs from lifting tiles up onto a hot roof in Texas in July. I'd love it if we could replace if we could replace human laborers with robots for like re-roofing. It gets insanely hot during the summer, and I want to see people not having to deal with that kind of thing. And
you're anti-roofer?
Well, I'm anti people having to work out in the hot sun, for very little pay in very adverse conditions. Let's use automation to make those jobs go away and hopefully have a different solution. I don't know what that end solution is. I do. It's UBI. But I don't know quite how we get between here and there. I do think it's going to be with a lot of teething troubles. But yeah, I really don't think that we need to exploit. It's not just labor. Like, let people work. I think a lot of people, most people probably, want to contribute something in some sort of way. But that doesn't have to just be your blood, sweat, and tears. It could be something else. Let people focus on other pursuits.
So in order for that to happen, we have to get to the robot revolution, which is being teased, though it's been teased my whole life, and I believe a few lifetimes behind that. The kitchen of tomorrow. I'm thinking of these like old
like 1950s style. Yeah. Soon everything will be automated in your kitchens. Yeah.
And it isn't. And there's reasons to think that, we have a better shot today than we did 70 years ago.
Sure.
But are we really on the precipice of it? Is it something that we strongly expect? I mean, we could go to just self-driving cars. Do we think within the next 2 years that self-driving cars are going to be?
Not within 2 years, definitely
5
not.
5 years, 10 years before. And that's probably the robot that's the furthest along of being like a real, I can replace jobs robot and operate independently out in the wild.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of industrial and like, we'll call them almost background jobs. Self-driving cars, very, very visible, shall we say, to people. Yeah. Everyone's driving around. You see cars and like, oh, what if there was a lane that was dedicated to them? Something like that. I think that's an extremely visible thing. But warehousing, I brought that up earlier. Amazon employs 50 trillion people in just warehousing. That's probably not an accurate number, but I know it's a lot. I know it's not an accurate number. I know there's not that many people. Anyway, the point is, warehousing sucks. That's not a job that people should be doing. And I know they're trying very hard to replace those folks with robots that can work 24 hours a day. Good. Let them. Warehousing has a tremendous amount of turnover because the people are underpaid, overworked, mistreated. Don't mistreat the robots. They'll come get you in the robot revolution. And I think that that's probably farther along than like a self-driving car, because there's more complexity to everything that could possibly be on the road and all the weather conditions, as opposed to a warehouse where eventually there's no people to run into. There's QR codes to show you where all the bins are, whatever. I see that as a much more controlled space. And I think that things like warehousing are probably going to be automated more fully, more first. And when I say more fully, it's the same thing as like a ChatGPT. It's going to be X% of people, X% of the time, and X% of circumstances that think it's better than a person. Same thing for warehousing. In this 10%, it's better or faster or cheaper. In this extra 30%, it's about equal. The remaining, it's not there yet. It's going to come in drips and drabs. It's not everything, nothing.
So maybe if we get back to focusing on the AI, and especially in relationship to warehouses, the suggestion of how the transition might happen is that it starts by putting robots in the warehouses, but there's actually a human behind them. And there's a human operating
puppeting
them.
it like a
piloting. It's a
doll or
drone.
something. Yeah, sure.
And slowly over time, the robot learns the actions from the human. And I mean, this is how a lot of AI actually works, and why you should be skeptical about a lot of demos that you see, because most of this stuff starts with, well, can I train a human to do it, and then starting to think about how can I train a model to think like the human.
But it doesn't end there, does it? Let's train the model to act like a person, and then you have the model do its thing, and then a person is still hovering over its shoulder, checking its responses. And that's not a thing that seems to end. In every job that I've held, nope, in most of them, there is a human at the end of the loop, shall you say, that looks at the output from something and helps determine, yes, this was right, or no, this wasn't. Sometimes, in some cases, it's 100% of the things that the AI model said, I think it's this, and a person double checks everything. Sometimes it's just the edge cases, or the model didn't feel very confident about it. But like, there's a lot of AI that is really just a person's job that was sped up with AI. But that doesn't sell as well, does it?
This is what's commonly referred to as human in the loop.
Yeah, human in the loop. So, and I think this is honestly in the direction of what I believe a better use of these kinds of technologies is, which is to say, you aren't completely automating something away. You aren't getting rid of people's jobs. You're making people's lives easier, more convenient. You're automating that 80, 90, whatever percent, so that you can then look at this, make the corrections, and move on with your life. And it doesn't even have to be AI. I mean, the same sort of thing has been happening ever since we've had an abacus, calculators, whatever, or the first Microsoft Excel, these kinds of things that are tools that are using technology to be productivity enhancers. And there's a disconnect between a human in the loop thing where you think it's, oh, this is an ML powered product, this is AI, but there's really a person who ended up checking it. I don't know. There's that, it's this big disconnect that I have. There's a disingenuousness to AI where it isn't really AI in many cases. It's AI and also a person. Fast
the
food,
problem is
restaurants, classification, everything.
We're presenting it as this is all it's all happening on a computer is automatically doing this by way of a model with weights. I guess Amazon recently, there was a story about Amazon. I think we talked about it on the show where there are stores where in the stores there were grocery stores, convenience stores.
You just put the stuff in and you walk out.
Yeah, grab whatever you want, walk out. The AI figures out what you have and charges your credit card. But in reality, there was a giant team of people, I believe it was in India, who were reviewing the footage.
Being paid very little.
And then writing down what it is you purchased. Now, it is believed that their software was indeed suggesting which items you purchased. But they didn't have enough.
It was as automated as they could get it.
Yeah.
And it was probably 80% of the time.
But it wasn't presented like that.
Yeah. It was presented as it's AI. You just pick up the stuff, you go out, and it's automatically doing it.
Was that there's someone very far away in India watching you on a remote video camera, tracking what it is you're purchasing.
It probably not quite that, but rather it'd be like a bunch of 3-second long clips of here's the person's hand reaching up to grab the thing and put it in. Did they actually grab just one of that item?
Did I tell you
but still,
about
it's the same thing.
The AI accusing me of stealing at the grocery store? Did I tell you that?
I think you did mention that. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I wasn't, for the record, but we'll move on.
So speaking of people in the loop, looking at short video clips and determining was this machine learning model correct or not, there's a company called ZeroEyes, which is looking to see if somebody's got a gun. And this is being sold to schools.
Yeah.
For fairly obvious reasons. I don't think we need to get too much into that. But there are a bunch of, and the article that we read was showing how like Kansas has some really stringent rules over like what kinds of companies are allowed to do this. It has to already be in 30 states, and it has to be like certified anti-terrorism, this and that. I'm going to ignore all of that. The thing that was really interesting to me is if you go to ZeroEyes' website, it shows there's the machine learning model that detects is somebody in the camera holding a gun, like shows do they have a gun on them, is it held up, down here, whatever. It detects that. The next step is, and then a person looks at that in the next couple of seconds and determines whether it was correct or incorrect. And if it was correct, it gets sent off. And like the overall amount of time is very short, but this machine learning thing, which does have a machine learning component, that's what's looking through a zillion hours of footage. A number of people couldn't do this. Not just because it would be too many people or too expensive or whatever. It's also because a person's attention would lapse over time. This thing can be perfectly, as perfect as the model is, paying attention all the time. So it pays attention all the time.
Machine discovered, human verified.
Exactly, right. And so I think that's a good use of the technology, but it's being sold as an AI solution. I suppose that is not entirely wrong, but it isn't showing the full picture.
So it's interesting, why do companies not want to, why do companies want people to think that it's just their software doing it? Because I guess we know that you're probably getting a better quality product if there is a human looking at every answer.
Yeah.
It's probably a better solution than if we just took the raw outputs from the model, every inference that was positive for a gun, and sent it directly to you. You're going to get a lot of false positives.
Yeah.
Most likely. And you probably are getting better results if they're actually paying humans to look at everything. But the companies don't want to tell you that. They don't put, it's actually a feature, but they don't want to put it out there.
Right. It's right there on the website, but like you can see this is an AI company.
Yeah.
Step 2, a person looks at it.
And also when I'm trying to like understand the value of the software, if I also know that, hey, there's a human team that's looking at all the results and filtering them for me, like conceptually that should make the software more valuable. Like, okay, I assume it's expensive to do it, and I need to justify why am I spending $100,000 a year per location. I have no idea what it costs, but I wouldn't be surprised if it costs something like that. And if it's just a program running on a computer somewhere versus, no, there's this whole team of people that are enabled by this special software that we built. It's easier to understand the cost, but we don't. It's been decided that that's not how you advertise and market these products. You need to market them as magic.
I think it's because it sells. If you're looking for venture capital funding, having a bunch of human labelers is not nearly as sexy as it's an AI.
So it's the moat thing.
I think so. It's partially that, and it's just partially like give the people what they want. Things have been marketed forever, and we're marketing it in a way that is not entirely wrong, but hides a little bit of the truth of the matter in a way that companies elsewhere are willing to gobble up. AI is hot right now, and so if you've got an AI thing, and in X number of seconds we can get you a positive prediction off of this, yeah, that's what sells. Even if you just never happen to really bring to the forefront, and people are looking at this too. It's probably part of the sales pitch too. You show people AI powered ML, and then okay, wow, I'm really enticed by this. Also, don't worry, we do have humans who look this over too. I'm sure it's in there somewhere, but it's not what you lead with. And I think that's just because this is what's sexy in the field right now.
Yeah, at least in the enterprise space, I've been a part of several enterprise companies purchasing AI software, and when they do their diligence, which they always do, and you fill out various forms of stuff, they know that there's humans looking. They ask those questions. They all ask the questions and understand that that's part of the process.
Because they all know. Yeah. It's all. Yeah.
Now, this doesn't last forever, right? I mean, we do have less and less humans doing this stuff.
Right. This used to be entirely done by hand. And now there's a degree of automation, and that automation will keep getting better and better. I also think this is one of those jobs that should go away. I don't think it's the best job in the world for people to be sitting somewhere and watching 2-second clips of some guy holding a thing like, is that a gun? Yes or no? Okay. totally separate person. Is that a gun? No, that one's not a gun. Yes, that one's a gun.
It's a hot dog.
Right, some guy just eating a hot dog. Oh God, he's got a gun. I think these are the kinds of jobs that we're working on automation, both for the benefit of eventually the general public, identify a shooter hopefully before they can do any harm, as well as the reduction of cruddy jobs.
Another thing that you and I were, I guess, playing with the idea of, I don't think we got through to the implementation of this, some people are using it, is putting other AI models as the human in the loop to create these sort of like multiple stages. So a machine learning model in the loop, and potentially one that is slower and better and more expensive. So we have these kind of filtered stages. So there's the really cheap, fast model that filters it down to, okay, here are the 100 incidents that you should review. And then those go through the expensive model that filter it down to, okay, here are the 10 incidents that you should review. And then the human just reviews the 10. But potentially there's, again, another model and another model to continue to filter it down.
Right. And we've been doing the same thing with people for forever. Here's everything. Then someone goes through and gives it a first pass and passes on the 10 things. Then the supervisor looks over it and says, oh, it was actually just these 2. And then you pass that on to upper management who does whatever with it. That this kind of thing has existed. We're just automating more stages of it.
So I guess as we consider legislation around transparency and training data, I wonder if similarly there should be consideration of legislation around transparency in human in the loop. What is actually a model? Again, just a requirement that you disclose that you can't present something as being completely automated when it's not, that it's an FTC violation or something.
Just like you can't have commercials of food that isn't edible anymore. Used to be, you could make something totally fake, but now like everything's shown that does technically have to be edible. And I think eventually there was also something of, it does have to be sort of representative of what the product that you could actually buy is. Yeah, maybe like right on the website, even if there's just a little asterisk and a thing at the bottom, like there's people involved in the loop and they do 15% of whatever. I'd be super in favor of that. I think that would be a nice way of bringing some transparency to this pretty opaque process.
Speaking of humans.
Speaking of opaque.
You remember Morton? Have you?
I fondly. Very fondly.
I guess for those of you who don't know who Morton is one of our listeners, and that's in quotation marks, listeners. I guess he works in IT.
He's a real person.
And the last, I think it was 2 episodes now, he's called in with, I don't even know, some rants and questions. I've not heard from him this week.
That's
However,
good.
We did receive a message from his boss.
It's less good.
I'm gonna bring that up here. See what we think.
Yeah, hi. This is Bob Limerick, Vice President at Next Tech. And I'm calling because one of my employees, Morton, who you might know, he's been leaving you voicemails. Now, I'm not one to micromanage, but listening to podcasts on company time is not part of his job description.
No listening to podcasts on company time.
He is micromanaging, right? If he knows that Morton's listening to the podcast, also, all right, even if that's company policy, that's not our problem. Morton, listen to it some other time, man.
He's supposed to be focusing on his efficiency reports, which the prick consistently puts off, probably to make more time for your questionable discussions.
I don't really...
That was unwarranted. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't... What are these efficiency
reports? An attack
reports?
on Morton's character and attack on our entire podcast. Who the heck is this guy?
Questionable topics.
Yeah.
And listen, between you and me, and please, let's keep this between us.
Wait, we're about to broadcast this the entire
should
world.
Know better.
But
I mean, we've put Morton's voicemails on here, right?
And you already called it questionable topics.
I might have overheard a few episodes myself. Not that I'm into that sort of thing. I mean, I run a company, not a comic book store. We don't want people...
Sick burn.
Yeah, ouch. All right.
Don't want people thinking I'm some kind of fundamentalist nerd, right? Yeah, that'd be great if that just stayed off the record.
What is a fundamentalist nerd?
I don't know, but I like it.
Now, back to Morton. If you could maybe stop filling his head with all these crazy ideas about AI taking over the world, or taste testing failed ice cream flavors. Because, Let's be honest, mustard pickle might just have a market. It would really help me out. I mean, the last thing I need is him trying to replace the office coffee machine with some AI barista.
That's a possible use?
The AI barista?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I've seen a usually broken automated coffee machine in like airports, which I don't really know how that's different from just like basically a Keurig. There's so much extra stuff in it, and just coffee at the end, right?
Barista as part of an efficiency overhaul. So if we could keep the wild tech fantasies to a minimum, or maybe just save it for the weekend, I'd appreciate it. I've got a company to run, and believe it or not, those efficiency reports don't file themselves. Anyway, love the show. I mean, I assume people love the show. Not that I would, personally know. Keep doing what you're doing, but maybe just tone it down during office hours.
Morton, just listen on the weekends or after hours. Your boss is definitely not micromanaging you.
I feel like Bob Limerick is listening to the show. That's my takeaway.
No, he said he wasn't, right?
I'm reading between the lines there. I think Bob's listening right now. That's my contention.
Well,
and
hopefully you weren't trained on a real person's voice. That's
Bob shouldn't be. Bob's worried that managing his efficiency reports is going to be automated in the near term. Well, Bob, if you want to find out about the secrets of automating efficiency reports, you're just going to have to tune into our next episode 16. But until then, and in order to be keenly aware of when everything does become self-aware, you should hit that subscribe button. It's probably down below. It may be up above.
Rate us 5 stars.
5 stars.
5, unless it goes up to 10, which case give us all 10
stars.
As many stars as you see room on your thing.
You should be able to find us on all the major podcasting platforms, but wherever you're consuming it now is probably a pretty good place too. Just hit subscribe. It's free, and you will get all of this incredible content, including what happens next with Morton and Bob. I can only imagine.
We're going into like this self-aware universe at this point, and I'm worried where this all ends.
Well, until next time.
We'll see you soon. Yeah. Thank you very much, Hunter. Really appreciate it.
They might be self-aware.